Jungkook removed his coat as he tossed it away, rubbing his temple once. The headache was getting worse as he uncuffed his sleeves, rolling them high. He just returned home and walked to washroom to look for his wife. When he didn't find her, he decided to change up. He believed she must be around somewhere in the garden or near the swimming pool. He took a pill to ease his headache and decided to look for her. She was usually around at this hour since he mostly returned at this time, so it was weird to not find her in the room or the lounge. Jungkook, where is wine? He asked the maid in the kitchen, stopping midway from dialing his wife's number. Maid, she hasn't returned home yet, sir. Jungkook looked at the time once and stepped out of the kitchen calling his wife. She went to shop with her friend this morning. She should have been back hours ago. When she didn't pick up the call, he called her friend, who told him she left for home 2 hours ago. He went back to his room without wasting a second and grabbed his car keys, deciding to look for her. But then he heard the scream of his maid calling out for him loudly. He marched out, eating up the space with his long strides, and saw his wife back home. But the difference was she was on the floor, unconscious or dead, he couldn't tell from such distance, and his maid was beside her trying to wake up Ryan. He rushed by her side, and the first thing he checked was her pulse, and to his utmost relief, it was still going on. It was like his heart had stopped for once when he found her on the floor that way. Something felt so terrific in that one moment spent before checking her pulse, something that almost stole his soul away. He had never seen or never felt this way before. It was a foreign feeling. He was not used to it at all, a feeling he didn't know how to react to. He was glad that one destructive feeling didn't remain for too long. He picked her up, taking her to his room, and the maid called her personal doctor. Jungkook took a seat beside her and tried to wake her up, but she just didn't. He also checked her everywhere for any injury. There were none except for marks on her wrist, which were enough to boil his blood. He wondered how come he wasn't aware of her going missing this way. No security informed her. She was clearly hurt, and he was just not ready to believe under such trained men this all happened, and he was kept unaware throughout the whole time. A part of him wanted to ask them, but another part, the bigger part, stayed beside her and watched the doctor checking her up. His arms crossed, and his eyes were intense as the female doctor did her work. She told him that his wife probably had something stressing her a lot, causing her to faint like this. Jungkook, she was fine, and trust me, she was. I would have known or noticed something. She was happy right before going for the shopping. Doctor. Then it must be something she found now. Something that put her in a shock. Her physical health is completely fine. Jungkook took a seat beside Ryan once the doctor left and held her hand. His eyes fell on her wrist again when he saw the marks, which were quite faint by now. Marks of fingers. Why would you disappear this way? I sent you out all healthy. He kissed her forehead, stayed beside her for the next 2 hours, and that's when she stirred and woke up. She had such a rough comeback to reality, sitting up with a sudden jolt and hissing when her heart spun. Her breath was rigid, and there was terror reflecting her eyes. Jungkook, hey, hey, it's okay. I got you. You're okay. He took a seat beside her and held her close to him, caressing her arms. He forced her to look at him and realized that whatever she saw was just a nightmare. Jungkook, you're okay. You're fine. Her unfocused eyes slowly caught his sight, coming back to reality, and she held his arms for support. Vine, Jungkook, you're here. He slowly moved her in his embrace, which she needed very much at that moment. They stayed there for the next 10 minutes, giving her all the time to calm down. Jungkook, tell me, what happened? She stayed quiet for a while, then pulled back. Vine, I hid something from you. Something from the past because I just didn't want to remember it anymore. Vine, I had a toxic relationship in the past. He was really mean. And then he started to be abusive. He hated every time a man even looked at me or I looked at someone. May it be accidental. I broke up with him. Vine, it took me a lot of time to heal. I couldn't I couldn't tell you. I didn't want to even think about any of this. But today, he suddenly appeared in the mall. Vine, I got too scared. I knew I had the security, but it's like everything started to paralyze me. It was too bad. I didn't want him to see my friend, so I told her I'm going back home. Vine, but somehow he got me midway and made me lie to security that I was going to my friend's home. She never looked at Jungkook, even once. He was still holding her hand the same way as before, softly and gently, but the heat radiating out of them told her that he was extremely mad. The aura had shifted, and she feared to lift her eyes. Wine. He took me home. He didn't really hurt me physically, but when I told him I got married, he got even more mad. Started to threaten me to leave my husband, otherwise, he will hurt everyone around me. Wine. He knows a lot of people, my family, a few of my friends too, and if he said he will hurt them, then I don't doubt it. He's crazy. Jungkook exhaled out, looking the other way. His eyes closed, and he put everything he got to keep himself calm before her. How come he never knew how much she went through in her life? Ryan, I'm sorry, but I didn't want to hide anything anymore. I trust you, Jungkook. You always treated me with such gentleness and affection. Jungkook, thank you for telling me. I'll take care of it. No one, absolutely no one, tries to hurt my wife. He helped her back in sheets and covered her up, leaving a kiss on her forehead. Jungkook, I'll take care of it. I want you to rest for now. Jungkook sent the maid to her room, who brought her something to eat, while he himself left to take care of some personal business that was driving him extremely mad. It was not hard to get his hands on her ex, and when he did, he made sure nothing remained of him. He took his time torturing him. Wine might not have given him the details of how abusive he was. But it was more than enough to let him imagine those himself, and everything he imagined only added fire to his rage. And it didn't end well for the man getting tortured by his hands. Half of his skin was burnt, and the rest half of it was filled in deep wounds and blood. Jungkook practically burned him alive after he was done with the torture and watched his body slowly turning into ashes. He enjoyed the sight way too much. The fire matched the burn and madness he felt all over. Once the fire died, so did he feel a little better. But nothing could ever make him forget the pain she faced in past that traumatized her forever. That was when he promised himself to never, in his life, make a mistake of even looking at her angrily. He was going to protect her. When he returned, he thought she was asleep, but she opened her eyes feeling his presence. Jungkook slept beside her in the sheets and Wine got in his arms, resting her head on his chest. Jungkook, you don't have to worry about a thing anymore. He kissed her forehead and rubbed his thumb against her wrist. He kept whispering sweet words to her ear, and she believed he was the best one for her. Wine, thank you. She kissed his cheek and looked at him with those eyes filled with such emotion that hit him straight against his heart. He nodded and wrapped his other arm around her as well, taking her hand in between his fingers and watched her slowly drift off to her sleep.